The World Soul Saga is almost upon us. We have so many questions about what Chris Metzen and company may be cooking over there, but before we can delve into delves, we have one more season to explore the Dragon Isles before we leave it behind. Season 4 of Dragonflight is the last hurrah of the expansion, continuing the tradition that begun in Shadowlands. This guide is all about the subject of gearing up for Mythic Plus in Season 4 of Dragonflight. In fact, it's a bit more guide than we bargained for. This was slated as like a 7-minute quick start guide type thing, and your old buddy Choice overshot the word count again, this time by a factor of 3. The editors love me, by the way. But see, I have my reasons. On the surface, Season 4 looks unremarkable, but the more I worked through the script, the more stuff I wanted to say about gearing up in these first few weeks of Season 4. Because I've already made my co-workers very mad at me, I don't really have time to define all of WoW's proper nouns. This isn't a video to tell you what the Revival Catalyst does, but rather how best to use it. This video is split into two parts. The first is a summary of the additions and changes to gearing in Season 4, and the second portion will walk through the item level trajectory of the season. I'm going to recommend what brand new characters should do when they first hit max level, and so on. But really, my heart belongs to, best in slot characters transitioning into Season 4. That's the subject that's the most relevant to this exact moment in time, and it's what I find the most interesting. And if you're like me, you'll probably be dusting off a few characters this season, but I'm too busy griefing the editors to comb over Twitch streams global by global to learn how the pros do it. And that's why Skill Capped is so neat, because it packages everything I need to know into convenient videos. And with Skill Capped's free monthly VOD review, I don't need to go to the pros. The pros come to me. So if you want to give it a go, just click the link below to learn more. But before we get into the subject of gear specifically, keep in mind that Season 4 introduces what can best be described as a difficulty squish. Without getting bogged down by the details, players were becoming increasingly fragmented by the various difficulty settings, and many modes were becoming redundant. So the goal of the squish is to make Heroics and Mythic 0 relevant again, and rein in the power creep on Keystone levels. Here's the diagram that Blizzard provided, which you may have seen before. Plus 5 keys should feel like current 15s, plus 10 should feel like 20s, and all of the IO and rewards have been scaled to compensate. This means that the new cap for the Vault rewards is now level 10. We'll get into the effects of this later, but just don't get mogged by a plus 7 key. Season 4 continues with the crests and flightstone system that we've seen on retail for the past year. No noteworthy changes beyond the new numbers resulting from the difficulty squish. At time of recording, we don't know if there will be the usual seasonal cap on crests. There probably will be, but it'd be nice if there wasn't, right? Like, it should be uncapped this season, right? But anyway, crafting is also unchanged. It's a new tier of sparks and enchanted crests. And it's all the usual stuff. Like usual, the most reliable source of sparks will be the weekly quest. This season it is called the Last Hurrah and cycles through seasonal world content like the raids. Honestly, the situation with tier sets may be the most interesting thing about this season for me personally. As usual, players can obtain tier items from raiding, the Catalyst, the Mark of Mastery, and the Great Vault. Blizzard allowed the community to choose each spec Season 4 tier set from the previous Dragonflight sets. For the most part, everyone got their favourite set. Like previous seasons, the Mark of Mastery is awarded for completing the Season Master achievement. Since this is a Mythic Plus channel, your most obvious route of getting this is Keystone Master, but hey, if you're competent in PvP, it can actually be much faster just to knock out 1600 in Solo Shuffle. Why not check out Skillcap's PvP channel and maybe... No? Not interested? Yeah, no, it's cool, forget it, it's fine. Anyway, you can exchange the mark with a vendor for any tier piece you want at hero level. The vendor can be found with all the other Awakened vendors in the Parting Glass, the previously Barren Tavern in Valdrakken. The Revival Catalyst behaves the same way as always, but now receives a new charge weekly rather than the fortnightly cycle we've seen in previous seasons. This is actually a pretty significant quality of life change. What makes the Season 4 sets so interesting is the way that they interact with the Season 3 sets. Because they don't. Look, check it out. I have 4-piece of the Season 3 set bonus equipped. The Season 4 set has the same bonus, but equipping a Season 4 piece breaks the Season 3 bonus. The situation grows more dire when you equip a second Season 4 piece, because we allegedly have double 2-piece, but as you'd expect, the bonuses don't stack. So in practice, 2 Season 4 pieces are behaving like any normal off-pieces. For a spec like Vengeance that's very reliant on its 4-piece bonus, I'm expecting players will do an all-at-once changeover from 4 pieces of Season 3 tier to 4 pieces of Season 4. Meanwhile, specs with a returning tier set can run double 2 set. That isn't the huge advantage that it might sound like. In the long term, no one is going to be wanting to run double 2 set, but it gives you some interesting decisions to make early in the season. We're going to talk a lot more about tier later on, but for now, let's move on. Similar to Shadowlands, Season 4 of Dragonflight will cycle through an Awakened effect on each of Dragonflight's 3 raids. The Awaken effect scales up the bosses and rewards, and in essence, makes that raid the raid for the week. You know, you gotta do that raid to get your vault rewards and that sort of thing. One notable change is that these bosses do not receive additional mechanics like we saw in Shadowlands. This should make the raids a lot more approachable, but a side effect of this, of course, is that players only have the chance to loot specific items from a raid once every 3 weeks. But as Shadowlands gamers will remember, there was a solution to this problem. Shadowlands Season 4 offered players a limited number of dinar tokens that could be used to purchase suboptimal versions of the big ticket items from the raids. These items served explicitly as bad luck protection. The items were good enough, and enough to stop people whinging on the forums. Dragonflight brings back a version of this system, but it's more powerful and more forgiving. Season 4 features antique bronze bullion, a currency that can be exchanged for basically anything important from Dragonflight's 3 raids. You have weapons, unique and boring, all the raid trinkets, and off-pieces with notable effects. Anything you could really think to want is going to be on these vendors. And as I mentioned a second ago, those vendors can be found in the Parting Glass in Valdrakken. These items are also noteworthy for their Awakened upgrade track, which allows them to be upgraded all the way to the maximum possible level of that item, either 528 or 535. Bullion also lacks the hard cap that we saw with Dinar. Together, this means that these items are a core source of gear acquisition and basically removes the pressure to raid in Season 4. The Bullion have a similar behaviour to the Crafting Sparks, with a seasonal cap that rises by 1 each week. The Bullion drop from Awakened raid bosses. This means that players riding the gear curve will be picking up 1 Bullion each week, allowing them to purchase any item they want every fortnight. Characters arriving later in the season will be able to get caught up fairly easily, again similar to getting caught up on crafting. But while that may sound annoying, you know what was more annoying? Trying to get a Pharax Tainted Heart as a healer last season. Leave a comment with any war stories you have of trying to get a hold of that trinket as a healer last season. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about the actual experience of gearing a character. The Season 4 Dragonflight changes are perhaps most noticeable at really low item level. And I think one of the things that Dragonflight did really well was open up that early gearing experience. For the first few hours, you have an absurd amount of options. So while I'm going to provide what I consider to be the best solution, you can do anything to get geared for those first few hours. You can do all sorts of weird crap. If you're loaded with gold and don't mind being swindled, you can overpay for the crafted PvP gear. Don't do that, please. The numbers are cooked on PTR, but it should be like 450 item level, and players charge an arm and a leg for it. You can earn 460 pieces from literally flying through green orbs around the place. Show some dignity and don't buy this junk. And you know what? The same goes for LFR. You can queue for LFR at 386 item level for 480 rewards. Should you? No, don't do it. It's not worth it. Spend an hour or two bumming around the world content, do your last hurrah quest, and maybe buy some honor gear if you can scratch up a glorious Medal of Honor from another character. If time walking's on, that's also pretty good. You can do that to get some gear. Once you get to 441 item level, you're good to queue for heroics, which drops 476 gear. These activities will be rewarding you with Whelpling crests, which are actually really useful for crafting at this level. Crafting with Awakened Whelpling crests doesn't require a spark, it costs basically nothing and rewards gear up to 486 item level. So rather than incrementally increasing crappy 470 gear, you use the crests to kill off whatever 300 item level garbage you still have floating around from leveling. Through world content, heroics and crafting, you should be able to get to 470 item level in just a few hours. But really, this is all just about getting you ready to step into Mythic Zeros. If you played at the start of Dragonflight, you'll remember how potent a Mythic Zero World Tour was for gearing a new character. In Season 4, those tours will be more powerful than ever. These tours consist of the 8 standard Dragonflight dungeons, plus Dawn of the Infinite. You want to be getting into Mythic Zeros as early as possible, but what that means will depend on your own circumstances. If you're a healer who's a bit anxious about your abilities, maybe wait until 480 item level before starting to do M0s. Whereas if you're a Keystone Chad with loads of friends fighting for your attention, just get them to boost you from 330 item level, and skip everything up to now. At launch of Season 4, all characters will benefit from a world tour. Mythic Zeros are the major source of Drake crests, which aren't anything special, but you'll need them at some stage. You can't skip the Drake crests. You may as well farm them while 493 item level is still useful to you. It's also much easier to target specific items in Mythic Zero versus Keys. There'll be items like the Furious Rage Feather, which players will want ASAP, even if it's from just a lowly M0. Once that's done, you're good to start thinking about Mythic Plus. We've been talking about the difficulty squish constantly, but here's where it becomes the most impactful. The goal of the system is to make you feel every increase in a key level. The scaling is a lot more aggressive, so a +3 key with the Fortified Apex gives the trash an almost 50% health and damage buff over the Mythic Zero. Personally, I'd look to avoid doing +2s and go straight into +3. Level 2 keys only award 3 item levels above a 0, and you only get a fraction of the loot. Level 3 keys at least provide 6 extra item levels, so it begins to feel like progress. In an ideal world, you want to finish week 1 with at least 8 completed plus 10 keys. Those can be miserable depletions or timed. The choice is yours. Naturally, you want to push as hard as you can to max out your vault, but I will say, don't let a week 1 vault get to you. Completing 8 plus 10 keys is one thing, but there's a lot of other hidden extra keys that you need to account for. Every level 10 key in week 1 represents 3 to 4 other runs to level it up. And how many plus 5 keys do you and your friends need before a plus 10 feels realistic? Look, the point that I'm getting at is that it's Season 4, dude. No one is taking this seriously. If work is overwhelming you or whatever, you have my personal permission to settle for a suboptimal vault just this once. And then never again. But beyond that, I don't know what else to say. Like it's Mythic Plus. You're on the grind. You know, target the keys you need for the loot and the IO you need. Do what you're able to do. This is it. This is World of Warcraft. You're trapped here now. Forever. This is an M+ channel, so you guys are M+ guys. I get it, man. I really do. Raids have always exerted some pressure on Mythic Plus. The logic goes that raids need something to justify their existence. So every tier, the best trinkets overwhelmingly come from the raid, or there's a pseudo-legendary, or an actual legendary. But I can't remember a season where raiding had less impact on Mythic Plus than this season. Like, new characters will have some housekeeping to take care of, but the bullion system removes basically all the frustration that comes from acquiring the raid gear. Rather than needing to scratch and claw for essential items, you just need to turn up and do the raid. And of course, the Revival Catalyst is a much more convenient way for M+ guys to acquire tier versus pugging the raids. But, you know, early in the season, when things like the Catalyst charges are so scarce, there are big advantages to going to the raid early and, you know, winning the lotto. And that is most true when it comes to the subject of tier gear. There was a lot of negative sentiment around the subject of tier acquisition and dragonflight. This was mostly from Season 1, of course. I worked as a Race to World First analyst for BDG for that tier, and I helped assign the tier sets to mirror mains, and mate, you aren't ready for that, and I'm not ready to relive it. But to give you an idea, we ran 8 sets of mirrors that season, and that number was chosen, above all else, for the tier sets. That's the kind of bullshit that was necessary for a week 1 4-piece in Season 1. Even in Season 4 with a bunch of quality of life changes, getting your 4-piece in week 1 is still a huge pain in the ass. But you know what? What's the rush? What keys are you doing in week 1 that are so damn important that you need to race for your 4-piece? Chill the hell out, bro. You're gonna have like, what, 8 to 12 weeks? Just settle down. It's fine. It's fine. The tier sets are huge, especially if you're playing a spec that's getting a returning tier set in Season 4. You want to get them quickly, but you also risk hamstringing your guy for weeks if you're in too much of a hurry to get that bonus. Early in the season, Catalyst charges are precious. You'll be stuck with the consequences of your actions for weeks. So you need to ask yourself, will I regret this decision in a month's time? Will I look upon the champion tier set that I spent a Catalyst charge on and despair? This season is particularly weird because remember, 60% of us are keeping the same tier set bonus and won't be able to run double 2-piece. Generally speaking, I think everyone is going to want to do that all at once swap from Season 3 4-piece to Season 4 4-piece. In that case, don't think of this as a new tier set, but like as a bundle of item level that you get all at once. Even for a spec like Shadow that's getting its Season 2 set bonus back, the 4-piece is what really makes the archetype. Don't fall for the temptation of spending your Catalyst charge and your Mark of Mastery on a week 1 2-piece. Don't do it, man. In short, no matter your tier set, you should be aiming to build a respectable set of tier gear over the course of the first few weeks. All you need to do is give yourself every opportunity to get lucky and then use those elements within your control to achieve the best possible outcome. It sounds simple, but it can be nightmarish. So let's look at a hypothetical scenario to just gaze into the abyss for a second. Hi, so it's 2 AM right now. I just finished the very cool motion graphic you're about to see, and I just saw the news that they're changing the Catalyst charge to be on a weekly rotation rather than the previous fortnightly. That totally derails the content of the graphic, but not the substance, so just keep that in mind that this is going to assume a fortnightly Catalyst when in reality it'll be a weekly thing. Okay, cool, bye. So I log in day 1 and I pug the raid on Heroic, Normal, and LFR in that order. I roll on any possible tier piece I can use. That gives me 18 chances at tier pieces. Let's say that I net 1 tier item, a helm from LFR. Awesome. I then spam keys for the rest of the week and manage to fill my vault with plus 10 keys, in the process looting a hero track pair of legs. When the reset rolls around, I get lucky again and have a myth level tier chest in my vault. If there was a bomb under my desk and I had to immediately evacuate, I could build my 4-piece right now. All I'll need to do is catalyze the legs, spend my Mark of Mastery on shoulders, and bolt for the exit. We'll call this guy Choice A. He's the guy that, didn't make stupid decisions, but took a early week 2 tier set. But Choice A has made 2 major compromises. An LFR helm would deeply suck to be stuck with, and as vengeance, the leg slot is my preferred off-piece. So I wouldn't want to do this. I would rather run the full Season 3 set for another week than take this deal. So let's keep going. Week 2 rolls around and I repeat the process. Raiding gives me normal mode gloves, and keys give me heroic track shoulders. And at the end of week 2, my vault provides a myth off-piece helm. That would coincide with my second charge of the catalyst. With that second charge, I don't even need to use the normal mode gloves, and I can use the Mark of Mastery for a straight up upgrade. This is choice B, and he's feeling pretty good about himself. Meanwhile, choice A is kind of screwed. The best thing to do here really is to go back into keys and try to get back the pair of legs we started with that we used a catalyst charge on. And if that's not annoying enough, choice A is now stuck with champion level gloves for the next 2 weeks minimum, unless he gets very lucky in heroic raid. When the characters are put side by side, the difference doesn't seem that dramatic, but remember, both these characters received exactly the same loot. The difference in power we're seeing is entirely self-imposed. And when you look at it from that perspective, it is pretty significant. Choice A managed to burn 2 pieces of 509 gear and a catalyst charge. Those are resources that have been scattered to the wind. When your tier gear third eye opens, it can be a bit overwhelming because it's a very oppressive system. Like, assigning the tier sets in Season 1 for BDG was legitimately one of the most stressful experiences of my life, because there's so many different ways that can break, and there's so many wrong answers. And what's unique is that there isn't really a right answer, because ultimately you're trying to predict the future. So it's not a matter of winning, it's a matter of not losing. You want to make decisions that you won't regret. You know, as the great Bud Grant said, you got to live with the bounce of the ball. So to sum all this up, should you use Revival Catalyst on a veteran item, or is it better to... No, hero, absolute minimum for like the first month. Veteran? What are you talking about? Like from the soup quest? Are you insane? Earlier in this video, for a joke, I wouldn't go below champion. And you want to do veteran? Who hurt you? Why are your ambitions so... For your own sake, dream bigger, bro. Please, dream bigger. Don't use a catalyst charge on a veteran piece. Ugh. Sorry, you want crafting as well? Didn't you see how expensive that graphic was? This video is meant to be 7 minutes long. Please, just let us go. I don't know, man. Assuming they don't uncap aspect crests like they ought to, your first use of aspect crests should be crafting 525 embellished gear. Go on Murloc and just follow the herd. Do not waste your gold or crests on crafting otherwise peasant slot items with an Enchanted Worms crest, because you're just going to have to redo it anyway. And again, it's the same thing as before. Like, what keys are you doing in week 2 that are so damn important? You know, like bro's over here thinking that he's Genji crafting to do +8 keys. Cringe. Don't do it. Since you're likely going to be picking up best in slot items with your bullion, it's not as complicated as the tier set, and there's not as much incentive to wait. However, if it's week 1, it may be worth waiting a little bit, like a few days, solely because, you know, the meta hive mind hasn't figured out what you ought to be buying yet, what the actual best in slot thing is. As an example, the Whispering Incarnate icon is likely very good and could very well be meta, but there's a bit of a prisoner's dilemma with it right now, where it's only good if everyone buys it. That's the answer to the prisoner's dilemma, is just wait and see what the other guy does and then choose correctly. We figured it out. Anyway, so just to speculate for a second, if these items behave normally, they'll cost a ton of flight stones and potentially crests to upgrade. So while you can buy these as soon as possible, don't waste your aspect crests upgrading them immediately. Go collect garbage strings from Mythic Plus to trigger the catch-up mechanic and save yourself the crests. Long term, I'm excited to see if we see any variants in the trinket loadout. It's like, you know, like an obvious one that came to mind for me is, you know, will we see healers using the frac trinket that I mentioned earlier? Thana says no, but, you know, like, what does he know about healing? You know, So let's sum this whole thing up with a nice number to-do list. Do at least 1 week's Mythic Zero World Tour. Don't argue with me, just do it. Do your last hurrah quest and acquire Awakened Sparks. Early in the season, ruthlessly pursue tier gear in the raids. Go into Awakened raids to earn bullion, spend them on whatever item speaks to you. Run on the Mythic Plus treadmill, fill your vault with the highest quality of keys possible, make smart decisions with your Catalyst and Mark of Mastery, make a decision that future you won't regret. Spend Drake and Worm crests to plateau high value items like, you know, hero track tier gear. Prioritize your aspect crests on crafting best in slot items, particularly the embellished pieces. But most of all, have fun. Between Awakened gear, our goated tier sets, and unhinged item levels, Season 4 should have the kind of insane power creep that makes classes feel great to play. A lot of people have expressed disappointment that Season 4 wasn't grander or more ambitious, and I appreciate that for sure. What we're left with is a low-friction distillation of Dragonflight's Mythic Plus experience. If you've enjoyed M Plus for the last year, you're likely going to really enjoy this season. Unless you just hate Halls of Infusion that much, that might do it. But that's all I've got for you. Thank you so much for watching. And thank you for the positive response to the previous video. We genuinely weren't expecting it, but all the nice comments and things were enough to send a message right up the food chain that we're doing something interesting over here. So sincerely thank you for that. And you know, I would never pressure you on doing something you don't want to do. But this video is meant to be 7 minutes long. You know, I didn't get paid any extra making a 20-minute video. I did that for you. So really the bare minimum you can do is go down there and leave a nice comment. Don't worry, I'll wait. And while you're down there, you can click the link to visit the Skill-Capped website. Skill-Capped provides high-quality video guides for every spec in the game. Our experts guide you through the fundamental and advanced elements of your class, enabling you to spend less time bashing a target dummy and more time bashing a boss. Members also get access to a bunch of Discord perks, such as our Ask a Pro section. We're also still doing a limited time offer on a free monthly VOD review, which is a really sweet value add, and it's all backed by our rating guarantee. So again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.